I had the honour and the privilege. I've been asked by Bobby Clark, who's the, I think, convener here at the Airdrie Workmens Club, if I would MC this event to raise funds for Andy Goram. Sadly, the original idea was to raise funds to make the rest of his life as comfortable as possible, maybe a wee holiday or something like that, but events have kind of caught up with us a wee bit, and sadly the money now will basically, a lot of it's going to cancer charities, the St Andrews Hospice, and there'll be money going to his family, which we basically hope will help with funeral expenses.
I knew Andy when he was at Oldham. I was down there in Liverpool at my mate Matt Ward, who played me at West Ham. It was his birthday in Liverpool, and I went up with a couple of boys from West Ham, and we met Andy at the party. So that's the first time I met him. That was the first time. So
I went to Oldham on loan when I was at Man City, and I got to know Andy well, and I've known him ever since for all that time, sort of thing. So I really feel he's a special person. His career went on to really higher things. You know, we ended up having played for the same team, both being ex-Rangers players, and because he'd been living up in Scotland for a few years, I've been speaking with him at dinners, functions, and I have a lot of time for him. He's been a good friend over the years.
Not the goalkeeper, the person. That's what I'm here for more than anything else, because everybody knows how good a goalkeeper he was. Fantastic athlete in the respect of that, and people would never think that, but he was honestly, we used to think he had about 6 or 7 arms. You know, he was outstanding against us many times, but he was always a credit to the club. That's what I always felt, you know, because they beat us a lot of times in my period, and they never rubbed it in their face, and that was always the thing that stuck out in my mind. You know, they were respectful, enjoyed it in their own way, you know, in their own time, but never rubbed it in their nose in it, and that was a thing we always had respect for each other.
I played against him at Hibs, you know, and he kept winding me up saying, "You've not scored against me," and all that, and then, you know, I brought a video out showing me chipping him. Loved him, so he's got a short memory. One of my claims to fame was actually when he was playing with Hibs, when I scored one of my best goals. I think it was goal of the season actually became, and it was against Andy, and I always said that was my claim to fame because I knew how good a goalkeeper he became, you know. And as I say, but a wonderful person. That's the biggest thing for me more than anything else. And I've met him a few times, obviously, away from the football. In later years, as I said, we were in Dubai representing Scotland, England and whatever. And Andy was over there, always great fun, you know. But a smashing guy, you know, loved his profession, loved his football club, as we all did at that particular time. You were either Celtic, you were either Rangers. He loved his club, we loved our club, but there's always a mutual respect there.
Probably the finest goalkeeper Scotland's had in the last 50 years. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of goalkeepers in there at that time. But when you part of a team that's qualifying for the Euros and qualifying for the World Cup, then you've got to be in a squad, and you've also got to be good enough to perform. And that's what he was. You know, he was a massive part of the Rangers. I think he said he was 7 years at Rangers. And, you know, just a top class goalkeeper for his size. That was the thing, I think, for his size. But yeah, he more than earned his corn, and all the medals he won with Rangers, just a different level completely.
What a wonderful keeper. I mean, I played against Michael, and I would put him up there beside him. You know, I really would. Michael was a lot taller. Yeah, what the saves he put off, I mean, broke Tommy's heart.
The greatest goalkeeper that ever played for Rangers. I think Alan McGregor's probably the closest we've had, although with a great few before my time, whatever. But as a wine drinker, there's no one better, and probably gin drinker as well. But he'll be known as a flying pig because he could stop a ball from anywhere. As a lot of Celtic fans who might hate him or might love him or whatever, they'll understand that it's getting close to being a sad day for a Scottish football legend, not a Rangers legend.
Andy surprised everybody when he turned up tonight, and as soon as he seen you, he mentioned you. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was great. He certainly spotted me and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were here, Gordon," and he did mention the fact that the only penalty that I missed my whole career, Andy actually saved it. So he always reminds me of that. But he did mention it when he said that I did score past him in that game. So we're a bit even over the piece, but he's a great lad, and it was nice of him to mention that tonight. It was great that he saw me and wanted to, give me a respect for being here.
Well, it was incredible when he turned up tonight, and I mean, the reaction for the crowd said it all.
Well, Andy just turning up there, well, it really got me, but He's still made it, and he's still at his piece to say. He's never ever shy at opinionating or saying how it is, and it's quite appropriate, I think, what he said and how he said it as well as, and he's got a lot of stuff out there that, you know, it's he's a very, very, very brave man.
I knew Andy was going to come down. I was up at the hospice about 6:30, and spoke to him a day, and he says he was thinking about it, and I says, look, I'll not tell anyone until he makes sure. So when I went in the night, it was determined. When I told him who was coming, I told him Grant was coming, and he was like, wow, big Celtic guy coming to see Andy. He says, I'm going to make an effort.
I could see when I was standing behind him on the stage and he get his worthy ovation. The first thing I could see was so many women first, and then a lot of the guys reaching for the hankies. You know, they were genuinely shocked. But he was in good spirits because all we thought he was going to get. I'd been in contact with him since he went into the hospice on text, and we were kind of hoping that we would have got a message from him that I could have read out tonight, and would have been delighted with that, and that would have been more than enough, you know. But we get the good news earlier that his boy was going to bring him down for the hospice in a taxi, bring him in the wheelchair, and we thought he would maybe a wee wave to the fans and, you know, say thanks very much for coming, and then that would have been him. But half an hour, couldn't get the mic out his on, you know. So it was absolutely brilliant. And, you know, I don't want to get too mawkish or over sentimental, but as great a goalie as he was, that was one of his best performances ever tonight. To do that, with everything he's been through and the way his health clearly is the now, for him to sit there half an hour, still have a sense of humour, still been up for slaughtering all his old pals, all the old players, and, you know, and the love, I think it says it all about football, the love that he clearly had tonight for guys like Peter Grant and Frank McAvennie, who, you know, would I have been portrayed as his sworn enemies and all that, you know. It was very, very moving.
We went to 98 together, and I was captain, and we got to the USA, and the first game was against Colombia, and the second game was against the USA. So we're doing at breakfast. So he says, right, come on, he said, there's me a big Jim in it. And I'm like, well, it's got to be you, innit? I said, Jim's not had a great time. I said, it's got to be you. He said, see if I play that fucking first game against Colombia. He said, I tell you what, I'm taking the first fucking flight home. So he plays the first game against Colombia, pulls off this whirly, Valderrama hits it, top left-hand corner, saves it. I'm like, on that alone, you'll probably get the nod for the Brazil game. And of course, after the game, a couple of days later, before we played the USA, he said, that means he's playing against the USA, Jim. That means that he's going to start against Brazil. And I said, well, Andy, don't look into it too much. And of course, the next thing, 2 days later, I've got up, gone knock on his door. Me, Kev Galley, knocked on his door. Goalie, we're ready. Goalie, we're ready. Goalie. Nah, fucking done one, innit? He's got in the fucking next flight back to the UK.
I think it was in Hong Kong about 2012. I think there must be 10-year-old and he still wears them. It's a pair of Puma Pirelli, red Puma Pirellis, and as soon as we seen him wearing them, we caught him the Dorothy's, obviously the Dorothy of the ruby slippers out of the Wizard of Oz, and ever since then he's wore the same ones, the same. Oh, they're no fresh, by the way. I bet you don't know. But nah, he takes it in the chin, and he knows we love his Dorothy's. So hopefully we're going to send them over to Derek White in Dubai, and we're going to put him in the wee golf club in Jebel Ali, who look after us amazingly, as does Big Whitey and they might find a wee place for his Pumas.
You know, only Andy can go to rehab and meet someone in rehab and come out and start drinking. The two of them, one was worse. one was worse than the girl was worse drinking him. So it was. Listen, I've got a lot of faults, but I've got a heart of gold. And so is Andy. You know, he'll do anything for anybody. You know, and he plays this big hard character, but he's got a heart of gold.
When my late wife Denise was poorly, he rang me and spoke to her consistently. Back in the day, there was no real mobile phones, so it was all landlines. And yeah, Denise used to say, "Is that the goalie on for me?" I said, "Aye." So sometimes it was only a minute, but it's just the fact that you take the time out to think and make that phone call.
When it comes to this, it's just, you know, it's just heartbreaking.
I've known the guy 30 years. Breaks my heart seeing him. It's a difficult time. Obviously, we've lost a lot of great Rangers people in the last maybe year, as in Walter and Jimmy Bell and Graham Fife, and we David Wilson passed the other week as well. But seeing a guy you played in the same team as, I've known him since I was 16, as I says, and he probably was one of my closest ones. I went to Hong Kong when I think I was 18, and I was in the first team with him, and 13-hour flight we had to Hong Kong in business class. It's probably not the best start for a wee guy at 18 who was 10 stone 7 and goes to Hong Kong with Andy Goram and a 13-hour flight when he can drink for Great Britain, and I was never really a drinker. Went to Hong Kong for a week, went to Australia for a week, and I remember landing in London. My daughter was born in May, so the goalie said to me, "What are you up to?" I've booked us a flight to Belfast. I said, "Goalie, no." And my daughter's born in May. I've been away 2 weeks for you. I was there, I was 10 stone 7 there, and I've got a head the size of a pumpkin. Look at the size of my bloody head. What was going to kill us? But just getting to know the guy and getting to know what kind of human being he was mental as well, don't get me wrong. He wasn't the straight guy that everybody knows he wasn't, but he had a heart of gold, and if he had any, he would give you it.
He's always been my pal, he's always been there for me. So, you know, so I'm delighted to see him and help him out in any way I can.